I have a new sponge tool. This is practically the same egg-shaped sponge blender but with a fancy handle. Anyway, today I challenged myself to paint the skin with just speed paints and white paint, and I think I was fairly successful. This Grub Mini from Grimdark, Ohio is a commissioned painting. Thus, as usual, the second part of this video is more advanced to push the painting to a higher painting standard. The first part of this video focused on the painting of the skin with speed paints and washes. The skin painting is practically slop chop or sponge chop, but I stopped calling my painting slop chop since I do layering and highlighting on top of my slop chop. Not calling my speed paint painting slop chop also helps me to avoid some slop chop police. The second part of this video is the painting of the eyes and the freehand painting of the wounds on the belly. So, join me as we paint this beautiful mini from Grimdark, Ohio with the Army Painter Paints. I'm Don, welcome to my channel. This channel is supported by all these awesome brands. Also, special thanks to the Army Painter for making this video possible. Oh, by the way, don't forget my affiliate links and discount codes down below. They won't cost you extra, but you'll get some good discounts. Lastly, do check out spraygunner.com. They've got everything you need for painting from top-of-the-line airbrushes to high-quality paint brands. Now the business is out of the way, let's paint. We start our painting with a quick and loose zenithal prime with my Aventus airbrush by Gallery. I installed the 0.4 needle and the bigger cup, since we are using primers. Then, as usual, we remove the nozzle cap and the paint cup cap. I remove the nozzle cap for easy pinching of the build-up paint on the needle. The bigger 0.4 needle is fat and allows pinching with your fingers. Please be careful when you do this if you are using a thinner needle. For safer cleaning, you may use a piece of moistened tissue to clean the needle during painting. I also removed the paint cup cap since it is just an additional part to clean after painting. The black primer is a solvent-type primer, then the deep gray and white paint are War Paints Fanatics. Both acrylic paints were thinned around 5 parts thinner and 1 part thinner at 25-ish psi. I allowed this zenithal to cure overnight before painting with speed paints. Never use white ink as underpainting for speed paints. The white ink, depending on the brand, might have a reaction with the speed paints. I recommend War Paints Fanatics Matte White as the final paint for the underpainting. If you are uncertain if your underpainting will react with speed paints, I recommend giving the mini a quick coat of gloss, then matte varnish, then let them cure for at least overnight. Once the underpainting has cured, we are now ready to paint. As usual, we are using my awesome Foxbite Hobbies painting holder and some synthetic brushes for the painting with speed paint. We start our painting with pastel salmon. This is a nice pinkish skin that has a strong base color but very weak contrast. Pastel colored speed paints are good base colors, but they are more opaque than usual. Our next color is Peachy Flesh. This is a more orange skin color. You may also use Crusader Skin, which is more pinkish. Both have a weaker base color but a strong contrast. I applied Peachy Flesh in 2 thin coats for a heavier finish. I have a new sponge tool. This is practically the same egg-shaped sponge blender but with a fancy handle. The sponge here feels a little softer than the egg-shaped sponge. Similar to the older egg-shaped sponge, this tool produced a nice stippled finish. Moisten the sponge and thin your white paint. The thin paint will self-level as the paint dries, allowing for a smooth finish. I thinned down the matte white around 3 parts paint and 1 part thinner medium, and I applied the thinned down paint in 2 thin coats. Once the sponge white paint is dry, we resume painting with speed paints. Shameless plug, guys. You could check out our new campaign at Kickstarter at kickstarter.com and of course at suratosstudios.com. Now we add green and warmer skin tones to the skin. We start with Malignant Green. Malignant Green is a pale, zombie-ish yellow-green color. Make sure to blend the edges of Malignant Green to produce nice, smooth transitions. Malignant Green has a very good base color but produces weaker contrast than usual. This color is transitioning well over our initial skin tones. The saturation and contrast of this color match our previous flesh tones very well. Once happy with Malignant Green, we proceed by painting Ghillie Dew. Ghillie Dew is a more vibrant yellow-green with very good contrast. I wanted more saturation on the hands and edges of the skirt of the Mini. Ghillie Dew gave me the saturation that I was looking for. Similar to Malignant Green, make sure to blend the edges to create smooth transitions. Now you may ask, why did I paint the flesh tones first, before the green tones? Well, we'll answer this later in the video. We are focused on the colors at the moment. Ignore the contrast for now. I applied Ghillie Dew in 2 thin coats. Once happy with your green tones, we now paint bright red on the lips and on the wound on both arms. Ignore the teeth for faster painting. Bright red is very saturated, so I thinned it down to around 2 parts speed paint and 1 part speed paint medium. Once thinned, it will have more transparency, so I applied this color in 2 thin coats. Now I want the green tones to pop more, so we use Crusader skin over the flesh-colored areas to complement the green skin areas. Crusader skin is a pinkish skin color with high contrast and will complement our previous layers well. Now we need to clean up our painting with matte white. I painted the nails and teeth in 2 thin coats. After painting these details, I also applied a couple of passes of white sponging with our sponge tool. When you paint with speed paints, and even more with washes, you may want to occasionally sponge white paint on certain areas. Painting with these types of paints darkens your painting very fast. So, sponging will help you manage your finish. You may also sponge other bright colors, like greens, ivory, or even ice yellow for more color depth. But as mentioned in the intro, the challenge was to just use speed paints and white paint. Now we paint my favorite speed paint, Pallid Bone. I like this better than Bag of Bones from Vallejo and even Skeleton Horde from Citadel. See, I know our competition, all of which are good, but I like the contrast that Pallid Bone produces. I painted all the nails, and there are a ton of them, and all the teeth with Pallid Bone. After painting with Pallid Bone, we paint our very last speed paint for this project, Rigor Mortis. Rigor Mortis is a very pale, desaturated pastel color. I thinned Rigor Mortis 2 parts paint and 1 part speed paint medium to add transparency. I then used this color to tone down the white highlights applied with our sponge tool earlier. After glazing Rigor Mortis on the highlight areas, we finish our skin painting challenge with some washes. I am very happy with our result with speed paints so far. We still have so much room to add contrast and darken some areas of this Mini with washes. The Rigor Mortis glazing blended the previous colors nicely. Warpaint's Fanatic washes, similar to Citadel washes, are ink-based washes. They are saturated and can darken your finish very fast. To give you a little bit more control with painting of washes, you may thin them down a little bit with water. I thinned down mine around 3 parts wash to 1 part water. I never use mediums with ink-based washes. I want my washes to be runny to add more surface tension. Surface tension is good for washes, since the wash will avoid raised areas and settle in crevices more, thus adding more contrast to your painting. Thin lighter colors less, since it will take you decades to build up contrast. Also, try to limit the painting of the washes to the crevices and not all over the Mini. Painting all over the Mini will force you to paint more highlights, and we usually do not want to do that. Washes dry slower than speed paints, so make sure to wick extra buildup on some areas. Also, let the washes air dry for around 10 to 15 minutes to allow them to settle on the crevices as they dry. After cleaning up buildups and allowing the washes to settle on crevices, you may speed up the drying time with a hair dryer. Notice that the painting is still nice and vibrant? We managed not to darken the painting with the layering of speed paints earlier by occasionally sponging white paint. Managing the brightness of your painting as you build up translucent paints is important if you want a vibrant grim pop painting. Simply put, when you plan to do layering with speed paints and washes, paint from bright to dark. Start with bright colors and control the buildup to darker colors. Success! I am happy with our finish. My personal challenge of just painting with speed paints, a bit of washes, and white paint yielded a fairly good result. Our new sponge tool worked like a charm, as expected, and the buildup of our colors was pretty controlled. The finish is not perfect, of course, and as mentioned earlier, we need to push the painting to a higher level anyway. To finish the painting of this Grub Mini from Grimdark, Ohio, we need to paint some textures, highlights, the eye, and a few freehand wounds on the belly.
If you're liking this video, do give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel.
The painting of the eyes is just basic layering and a few fat glazes. To maximize the bright white underpainting, we start our painting with Blood Chalice, a bright, cool red color. Normally, for tiny minis, we paint black paint for the pupil and paint the lighter colors inside the black dot. Since the pupil is huge here, we can paint the outline later. After painting the outline and pupil with blanched berry mixed with black, we blend the outline and Blood Chalice with pure red. Red Flag or pure red also adds more saturation to our painting. Now we use Raging Rose. Raging Rose is the brightest color in the cool reds triad. I eventually mixed small amounts of white into Raging Rose to build up the highlights on the pupil. Once happy with the highlights of the pupil, I painted dark textures with blanched berry. Then, I used Raging Rose again to paint the veins on the eye. Now I need to tone down the white eye. I used soft tone wash all over the eye, except the pupil highlights. This toned down the white areas to a warmer sepia finish. Then, we applied a red tone wash on the sides to darken the edges of the veins a bit and give our eye a more bloodshot look. To finish the painting, I stippled fat glazes of white paint. The painting of the wounds is an afterthought. After painting the eye, I found the belly to be too bare. So, I practiced a couple of freehand wounds at the back of the Mini, then decided bigger wounds on the belly afterwards. I must say that I like the smaller freehand wounds at the back, but I enjoyed painting both areas. To create a subtle difference with the red eye, I used warm red colors for the painting of the wounds. To finally finish the painting of this cool Mini, I painted more textures, highlights, and stippled fat glazes of various greens and flesh tones on selected areas to add color depth to our painting.
Now, before my final thoughts, a huge thanks to all my patrons at Patreon.
I am very happy that our attempt to paint good rotting skin with just speed paints, washes, and white paint came out nicely. Normally, I would use a variety of bright colors to come up with a similar effect. The multiple times of using the sponge during the painting helped a lot. I hope the first part of this video showed that you can produce good paintings with just speed paints and washes. You just have to plan your colors well and try to control the buildup of shades. Now, why did I paint flesh tones first, before the green tones? Well, other than painting from bright to dark, when painting with translucent paints, you may also paint from pale to saturated colors. These two guidelines will help you control the buildup of translucent paints. It is important to note that painting with translucent paints will always have a bit of unpredictability. A bit of unpredictability is what makes painting a lot more fun, in my opinion. Also, note that acrylic paints cure to a slightly darker finish, unless you want a very dark, grim dark painting. Give the Mini at least a day of curing before bombarding with more washes. Oh, by the way, you can follow this painting even without an airbrush. You can build up the underpainting towards white using a dry brush or a sponge. You may want to check my older videos about sponge underpainting. You can see in the video right now that I painted more textures and highlights on the skin. This is optional, but since this is a commissioned work for Grimdark, Ohio, I had to refine the finish. After letting the Mini cure overnight, I felt I needed to apply a couple of effects paints. The focal point of this Mini is the big eye, so we needed a gimmick to make it stand out better. So, I decided to use Disgusting Slime and Gloss Varnish. Disgusting Slime dries to a more transparent finish. Apply this paint in multiple layers if you want the color to stand out more. Even though I think we painted the eye nicely, the surface is too big not to apply gloss varnish on top. I applied a couple of thick, yes, thick and not thin, coats of gloss varnish to the eye, letting each layer dry in between coats. I also applied a thick coat on the wound on the arms to complement the eye and Disgusting Slime. Both effects paint seems to dry faster than washes, but not as fast as Speedpaints. There you go. I love the effect of the gloss and slime on the Mini. Glossy effects paint can be distracting on video and photos, but they sure look very nice in person. The contrast between matte and gloss finishes added even more interest to our painting. If you are a gamer, I recommend you try satin or semi-gloss varnish. They make the Mini look more saturated and they are more durable than matte varnish.
That's it, Pansit. I hope you like this video. Do comment, like, and subscribe and all that stuff. Until next video, guys. Bye!